Welcome to Beans and Breakdowns, a podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between specialty coffee and the heavy music community. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Justin Enis of the band Burr, as well as head roaster of Bolt Coffee. Today is a very coffee-heavy episode. It's a lot of coffee talk and nerding out, so I hope everyone enjoys it. Grab a fresh cup of coffee and wake the fuck up! What's going on, Caffeinated Crew? Today I'm joined by Justin Enis of Bolt Coffee and the band Burr. Justin, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, man. Hyped to be here, Grayson. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming on with me on a Saturday morning.
You know, sipping that good.
Mm-hmm. That new. So what are you currently drinking?
Right now, I'm drinking a Kenyan coffee from the Gatomboya washing station. That I roasted for Bolt. This is our first year buying this lot from this station, which is kind of a cool moment for me because I've been a fanboy of this coffee for 8 to 10 years, and this was the first year that we were able to kind of get our hands on it from the first container that left this year. Awesome.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear more about like the sourcing and things like that because I don't know a lot about if there's like waiting lists and stuff from certain lots.
It's interesting, man. It's we're really lucky, especially I think the interesting thing is like country to country, it's totally different, right? Mm-hmm. And so Kenya specifically, in the early days of our roasting program, we were getting coffee through Olam Specialty, which we still source a lot of our coffees from. They've treated us great. Mm-hmm. And I think a larger importer like that, they tend to get lots that I don't want to say are they're not worse, you know what I mean, in quote, but they're not the lots that are getting scooped up on that first table.
Right.
And so before Bolt was roasting, we were a multi-roaster and I made a really great relationship with Mark Barney, who is the owner of Kuma Coffee, was the owner. He sold the business to his partner and he started this importing business called Bend Coffee out of Bend, Oregon.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And Mark, for as long as I can remember, like Kuma just gets the dankest Kenyas and Ethiopias. And we just had a good relationship and we were calibrated and he hit me up when he started Bend. He's like, yo, I'm going to do this like really small thing. I'm only going to have 15 clients. Like, I'd love for you to be one of them. And so he goes to Dorman's, which is like one of the main exporters of Kenyan, specialty, pretty much like first table. He has an in there. And so this is our third year sourcing Kenyas through him, which is how we got our hands on Gatomboya, which is usually long gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's beautiful.
We're hyped. We're hyped. We had 3 lots this year, and this was the second one we released from there.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Sourcing to me is, I want to learn more about it because I love the round trip of specialty coffee, like the story of seed to cup.
Yeah.
But any little nuggets I can get on like how the sourcing works and everything, I eat that shit up. Even if people listening don't care, I care. So sit down and listen for a minute.
Yeah, it's like global commodity trade it's complex and like when you get it, for me at least, and I think likewise for you, like once you get that bit of insight and then you're sipping that coffee that is blowing your mind, you have that much more appreciation.
Yeah,
this thing, how many hands touched it, and how many people along the way kept quality at the forefront to then, you know what I mean, allow it to be what it is for a roaster and then a brewer to, have that cup sing.
And it's interesting because talking to Paul, who runs Night Flyer, he basically emphasized the fact that like even all the way up to it being like brewed.
Yeah.
So it's not even just like the picking, the processing, shipping it to the roaster dials and the profile, but even all the way up to like, we grind it like this, we pour like this, and that's how we get the best out of this. It's the care taken each step of the way. It's mind blowing to me, but it does, when you know those steps and you learn about those people, like every person in the process, I think it makes the coffee taste even better somehow. I don't know.
I agree. It's something I always do with like barista trainings too. Like, I start with seed to cup and the responsibility we all have as coffee professionals or beverage professionals. And it's like, listen, like we can fuck up that whole supply chain by not paying attention right now, or by, not purging your group head, like whatever it is. So I'm totally with that. It's like not treating your water, like not taking time to make sure your water is right. Yeah. It's definitely each little detail goes into making that coffee absolutely what it is meant to be. So where it is. Yeah, man.
That's a little bit of a selfish tangent that I wanted to go on.
Let's get it.
I am drinking Finca El Salvador. It's roasted by Gardelli, which is
word.
Yeah, there's a shop here in town that's carrying Gardelli.
I've of course, like in the last, I feel like year and a half or two, they've really.
Well, they're like the world roasting champion.
Yeah, right. Yep.
It's really fucking good. Like it's a 120 hour anaerobic processed coffee, which anaerobics speak to my soul.
Cool.
And it's got crazy notes, like a lot of blackberry and like plum, and definitely like some cherry-ish, but they're saying papaya on the bag. I'm not really, I think that's maybe too soft of a note for me to get right now, but once it's cooled, I'm probably going to get a little more of that sweet melon flavor.
I got to grab a bag of their coffee then. I'm about to release Bolt's first ever anaerobic. We've been buying, we get a lot of our coffees from San Vicente, which is Benjamin Paz's cooperative in Santa Barbara, Honduras. And we've been buying coffees from the same 5 farmers for the last 4 years. One of them, Bellarmino Contreras, grows Pataunema, which is that, it was a variety created by the Honduran government for like disease resistance. Then out of nowhere, it started taking over Cup of Excellence.
That's crazy.
So it was like a win-win. And we've been buying his wash process the last 4 years, which was like really good. Like it wasn't great. It was really good. It was like lemon lime.
Yeah.
Pointed acidity like that variety has. It was lacking, in my opinion, a touch of sweetness and a touch of body. I'd cup it out at like 85. But there was a little bit of room. And this year he honey processed it and then anaerobically fermented it. And so cupping it out next to the washed one, which the washed one outperformed last year's. And I bought 5 bags of that. But the honey anaerobic, dude, it added that syrupy sweetness for this coffee that I'm getting like a mango-y thing.
Oh yeah.
And then, just this like the syrupy sweetness, which also lends itself to the body. So like, dude, I'm hyped. That might be one I send you actually, because I have the bags at the roastery.
Well, if you let me know which one, because I don't know if you can get Gardelli easily in the States, but there's a shop here that they have. They're a Gardelli and Barn from Berlin.
Yeah.
And so I'll bring you a couple of bags, and we can do like a little shipping trade.
Done. Let's do it.
We'll fly under the radar a little bit. But yeah, definitely I'll bring you. This anaerobic is super. I'm used to the anaerobic being almost too fermented in a sense, especially like with Colombians. I've had some anaerobic Colombian that was just too
far.
Yeah, I couldn't drink it in the morning because it was almost like too sour.
Yeah.
But like it's still in a good way, but it just had too much of that super fermented red wine flavor. This one is completely balanced. So you do get a bit of the ferment, but it comes more like in that blackberry note. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Dude, that sounds great.
But they have it on the bag as an 88.5. roast yeah, so
no big deal.
No, right? So
yeah, just an 89, here you go.
Yeah, so
dude, awesome.
I'm still learning about that too. One of my friends is he runs like a small roastery here, and he's been kind of teaching me. I've been going and hanging out with him at the roastery because I want to learn how to roast. I love roasting coffee. I love the smell, like all of like the sensory details.
It's super, roasting is super musical and like rhythmic and not only like the sounds and the smells and all that, but like, at Bolt, we're on a production day, we're trying to hit 25 to 30 batches. Right. And in order to do that, you almost like zoom out into these like macro 15-minute rhythms of process. And in keeping that rhythm in between batches and everything, you're also like affecting your thermal, inertia and like how much like heat is in the metal, which indicate, you know what I mean? And it's all working together. So it is this really cool kind of like meditative day where it's like, it is, at the end of a roast day, it's exhausting because you're like staring at graphs, like thinking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's stuff. A lot of math still, but
yeah. But you know what I mean? And in a way too, it is also simultaneously like relaxing and musical. Anyway.
Yeah, I just love like the sensory, like you hear the beans like raw going in, and then when they dump into that cooler, and it's just like, I don't know what it is about that. Like it makes me, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's just like there's something there. But speaking about working at the roastery and everything, what was your introduction to specialty coffee? More so on the industry side. So what was your introduction to the specialty coffee industry?
Yeah. I dropped out of school twice. First for jazz bass and then for marketing and advertising, and was playing in heavy bands in Providence, Rhode Island. And the drummer of my band was working at this bakery called Seven Stars Bakery. And at the time, Providence didn't really have like, true third wave. I'll put the air quotes there.
Air quotes, yeah.
But it was a account that it was a shop that was using New Harvest coffee roasters, which at the time was like pushing things here. And was by far the most well-rounded and intentional coffee program in the state. I didn't like coffee entering that job, which people who know me today or who have met me in the last decade are like, wait, what? But I didn't start drinking it until really that first day of barista training. And I walked in and I didn't know it, but the instructors were intentionally brewing a Chemex like, oh, we're running late. So I walked in and I saw this like beautiful Chemex and they're, pouring over, and I was like, whoa, like, hey, I'm here for training, whatever. And it was a natural Ethiopia. And they're like, hey, do you want some coffee? And I was like, no, I don't really drink coffee. Like, I'll totally like make drinks and like learn that. And he's like, no, like, here's a cup. And it was that cliche moment. I took a sip and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Blueberry? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
could it be?
Could it be? And I swear from there, like I was already kind of like infatuated with looking at the certified baristas and seeing them make art and like start people's day and like being this like kind of like early morning creative maker that was also like, had a finger on the pulse of the community and all this stuff. And I was like, so I was already like primed. And then I think when I had that sip, I was like, shit, I was like, there's something here. And I swear, like from that point on, I just treated it like school. I went from there, I became head barista and barista trainer for 3 years. Then I worked at a larger roastery and importer called Equal Exchange, which is not specialty. They're more fair trade, grocery.
Okay.
But I was part of a tasting team there as a quality control technician. And so I was cupping with, 3 Q graders for 2.5 years, cupping 15 coffees a week.
Oh my God.
So that really, in a huge way, I was like, it got me calibrated to the Q and like grading systems, green grading, importing, roasting, and all that. And then life shit happened, needed a change. And Bolt was kind of like just getting going, and hopped on there and knew that we'd be roasting eventually. I kind of bought a roaster in that time in my basement to just make sure that I was like still, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like a hot top or something like that?
It's called a Santoker. It's a 1 pound propane roaster.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's pretty legit. Looking at it in my basement, it's like, this is dangerous. but my wife was amazing and let me do it. And thankfully I almost only died once from carbon monoxide,
natural gas poisoning.
Natural gas. But I made it through and was able to really like learn a lot through small, roasting a pound at a time. You could infinitely experiment and be like, all right, I'm going to change one variable, roast these two, cup them. What's that? And what does it mean? Right. So I kind of through that created my own language of I guess like modulating flavor. But anyway, that was way too long-winded.
No, it's great. Yeah, no, I am always super curious to know. It's usually a natural Ethiopian, but no, people's awakening.
I feel like such a cliche, but it even yet, like yesterday, I was at the shop and covering a bar shift, and a lady came in. She's like, "Hey, like, I want to get a coffee for like my boss. He's like a big coffee head, and I want to impress him." And I was like, "All right. There's no choice here. You're getting the Ethiopia Shantaweni, which is a natural we have going right now." And she's like, "Why are you so like set on this one?" And I was like, "Well, this is the birthplace of coffee. This is the original form of coffee processing. This is what coffee originally tasted like. And it's not at all what people think coffee tastes like."
Right.
So it's like, it's the one, it's always the one. And I fell victim to it too.
Yes. I think mine was actually, I know exactly what coffee it was. It was, I'd had like mochas and milk drinks at Octane. I don't know if you're familiar with Octane. Yeah. But then when I started working at a shop, it was Apollo by Counterculture.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe it's a washed Ethiopian. Yeah. I may be wrong about that, but that was the one. And it was actually on an espresso. Cool. Which was crazy. But then from there, it was like,
done.
Then the Burundi came out, like the limited Burundi. And we were doing it on pour over on V60. And that's when I was like, V60 is the only way of life.
Yeah. I remember that coffee. I also have vivid memories of that Burundi.
I still think about it like.
And everyone I competed that year, and everyone at competition that year, at least like US East Coast finals, like 4 of the 6 were like using that counterculture. It's like, how do you get your hands on that?
Getting more into the roasting side, what would you say that your preferred roast is? Like, I guess we could do it. Your preferred coffee to roast. However deep you want to go into this.
Yeah. Let's see. I would say, I love roasting washed Ethiopian coffee. We've through that same importer Bend, we've been getting some just like our washed Ethiopias are in that 88 plus. They're bangers. And we have a coffee right now, Bishan Dimo, which is Karume and plus heirloom varieties. But they're grown by, or the washing station Bishan Dimo is recently like taken over by Testi Coffee, which Faisal and Yoenis Hakim are the 2 owners of that kind of like group. And they own, I think, like 7 mills. And they're like fucking crushing it in terms of consistency. So like when I drop that coffee, I haven't had a more concise, louder first crack experience ever, which is just like, when you hit it like that, you're like, all right, this is it. It's just that moment of just pure bliss and satisfaction. And like the way it smells, like entering my art is like rad. And it's just like cantaloupe and peachy, and floral. It's like everything, I want it to be. But I do also really love like that coffee. Coffee's like that, right? And like when you're in that 88 plus, like you don't have to do much. You just got to get out of the way of it.
Right.
I do also have a real like soft spot for coffees that make me work.
I was going to ask if there's one that is kind of like a mystery or like very elusive.
Yeah. So we had this Colombian coffee from Antioquia about 3 months ago called La Soledad. And it was our first year purchasing it. We were buying it again, Farmer's full production because it ended up being one of our more successful filter coffees. And I'm so tired right now that I'm blanking on the variety. It was the first time I had seen this variety. I sample roasted it on the cacao, approved it. I was like, cool, great. Like, didn't really give it much thought. And then when I hit the Probat with it, like, typically, not in like a boastful way, but like typically I'm like 90% on my first batch, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That first batch, 90% of the time is within a small margin of where I'm aiming to get. And I was like off. And then batch 2, I was like, cool. Like the variety wasn't dense. It was pretty low moisture. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, it's going to turn around hot. I'm going to soak it and then like let it cruise. And like the thing acted like it was like rocks in there. and I was like losing it. And so I was like, all right, like take 2, again, let me change one variable. It's like, all right, I'm not going to soak it. You know what I mean? And I'll go like, more full heat up front. And the thing took off on me. I was like, what the like, you know what I mean? It was just killing me. All that said, by batch 4, which is not something I'm proud of, I hit it and was able to kind of create a target profile and then, run through the next 5 bags. But so I do also like coffees that kind of make me flex that muscle a bit of like, all right, like, what am I tasting? What's missing? What's that, ROR looking like? And how do we kind of, try to even things out?
That's great. What would you say that your favorite, your preferred brew method is?
Dude, I'm like such a, what am I trying to say?
Like a hypey, you get on a hype or
maybe a touch. Like when I start doing something, I dive.
Oh yeah.
And I like have blinders on. So it'll be like one brew method per 3 months, you know what I mean? And then I'll get hyped on a new one and it's all I do until I like crack the code or whatever. Yeah. So lately I recently bought a Kono dripper.
Okay.
Because I broke my V60 and I hadn't been brewing with my V60 for like 2 years. My previous hype, I was using a December dripper with a Gappy drip master on top, which is do you know the Mellow Drip?
Yeah, I do know the Mellow Drip.
Gappy's essentially that, but you don't hold it. It just rests on top.
So it's like what Hario did with like the drip assist.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So I was hugely into it. I was like, yeah, no, like fucking like, why am I going to like, we're not as good as machines. Let me just put X grams of water into this thing. And like evenness, like that was my whole thing. I was like, and I loved it. I was getting super predictable, delicious pour overs every time with that system. But then I was like, no, like, let me like the guitarist in Burr, Mike, was like, getting his setup going and getting really hyped as well. And he was doing like these little like 12-gram recipes.
Okay.
Like that some like crazy coffee head on Instagram was like doing. It's like, dude, you got to try this. Like it's on the V60. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I haven't grabbed that in a while. Let me give it a shot. And I got like 2 brews in before I broke my V60. But I like saw like, I was like, oh shit, there's something here in thinking about it this way. So I bought a Kono because I was like, one, I like the look of them. It was like clear and it just like looked pretty. But then also that dude, Lance Hedrick from Onyx.
Yep.
Was like talking about V60 and Kono and like, yeah, they look the same, but he was experiencing less unintentional bypass in a Kono because it didn't have those swirl designs.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I'm actually getting like 0.05 TDS higher, keeping all things the same in a Kono dripper. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, let me try one of those. So I bought one from Rogue Wave. And I've probably been brewing like that for the last 75 days.
Oh my God. Okay. Moving into some of the music stuff, what is the concept behind the band Burr?
Yeah. So Burr started, me, Casey and Mike, we all work at Bolt. We've all known each other in kind of different ways kind of before. It came together really. Casey, we're all musicians and we all like over time as getting to know each other, we're like, oh wow, we're bass, guitar, drums. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mike started working at the roastery with me, and like, on the thing, we'd be like, oh yeah, you know that band Electric Wizard? You know what I mean? And like would put that on. And he's like, oh yeah, but what about Cough? And oh yeah, what about Yob? And like, so we realized we were both really into a similar pocket of down tempo stuff. And Casey is like the drummer for hire in Providence.
Nice.
He's just prolific and super talented. And hadn't really played heavy stuff like this. He was in like a really gnarly math rock band. And so he's played like, heavy stuff for sure, but not like slow, doomy stuff. But we all like just got together and we're like, all right, let's like start playing. And so Burr we were playing and then kind of like being like, all right, like, I think it was like wrote a track, like took 3 months off and came back and like, we're like, oh, let's see if we can like play it again. And we all like nailed it. And I think that was the moment where it's like, oh shit, like we're all kind of like on the same level here. Like this is working. What do we do with it? And so we knew kind of like the type of stuff we wanted to play. And then we just thought like it would be a funny thing for ourselves to be like, oh, like let's have every track, every album and everything be coffee related.
Yes.
So we're like, oh, like Burr's like a pretty rad doom name. Like 1 word, 4 letters, like cool. And kind of just
also like grinds a coffee. Like it's actually like a grind. Like it's the thing that crushes shit.
Yep.
Heavy as fuck.
Yep. So we were like, it's metal, literally. So that, I think that was kind of like the like origin of it. And then from there, just kind of, iterated with songs and our sound and kind of figuring out, I think through writing a couple, a record and some singles and now writing some new stuff, figuring out like, all right, where are we? Where were we? And where are we now? And where are we going? Which is cool.
And then you guys just released a split with Don't Grow Old.
Yeah. So right before the pandemic, we played a show with them in New Bedford. They're out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Mike, our guitarist, had been in bands with a couple of the dudes in Don't Grow Old back when he lived in that area. And they're gnarly. They're really angry.
Yeah. A bit chaotic. It's really nice.
Yeah. They're live too. It's just like an onslaught of just sound. But we really vibe with them. And after that show, pre-pandemic, Josh Lemaire, the bassist and one of the vocalists, like hit us up. They're like, yo, we're doing this with you. We'll take care of everything. Just get us a track. And so we're like, yeah. Like, okay. Yeah, we can do that. And so we hit up Big Nice Studio, which is where we recorded our first album. Like in the heart of we recorded Underdeveloped and Particle Distribution a year ago. Literally a year. I think it was like November last year. So it was like peak pandemic here. But Big Nice had like it's an insane space. It literally is a big, nice studio.
Yes.
It's in like a warehouse, huge rooms, tons of air, and they have 2 mirrored rooms. So we were able to record just the 3 of us isolated from the sound tech and with like 2-way mics being able. So it was in terms of like, we've just felt super lucky to be able to write in that environment. And all of us like had a heart in a weird way, man, like not to get sappy, but it was heavy to we wrote these tracks kind of like in the angst of everything going on. And then being able to like know we were recording them and like continuing our creative stuff, like while seemingly the world was burning. It was like a wild moment.
Right. Like being able to give life to something when a lot of people are going through like difficulty and
Totally.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So that the one track we released in April, which as a single, which was Underdeveloped. And then the track that's on that split, we just released, I would say like a month ago, and we had a record release show about a month ago for it too, which is cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the contrast of the split is really cool because you guys have that really down tempo, like the bass and drums drive that rhythm. The guitar is just doing like crazy sounds, and then it shifts to "Don't Grow Old" side, and it's like I didn't expect that.
Yeah, we. I mean, I think even like with like shows, we love playing mixed bills. Like the show last night, like Black Beach, just like this like wild, like evil surf rock punk. And it's like, yeah, like it just, I think it helps both bands, right? When it's not just like, I don't know, doom,
like sludge.
Yeah.
No.
So
you can only vibe and headbang so much at a show, right?
Yeah. So I 100%. So I think that was something we were excited about. Just knowing "Don't Grow Old" sound was like, yeah, dude, this will work.
Yeah, it sounds really good. The fucking drums on that, on basically all y'all stuff, what y'all record at Big Nice is like, because I'm a drummer, so it really, I love like, there's a sound, and I think it's a cymbal, but it really just sounds like a church bell that somebody is smacking with a hammer.
We call it the Burr bell.
It's beautiful.
It's Casey, our drummer, had this just insane. It's a bell like this big.
Oh, like one of those Zill bells or whatever, but it's like an 11-inch. Oh, it's so nice.
And he'll just like, you just see him and he's just like whacking the crap out of it.
The first time I listened, I was like, I don't even think that's a cymbal. There's no way that this is a cymbal. It's just like bong.
He's going to be so excited that you brought that up.
I'm always looking for the perfect bell sound. And so when I heard that, and then it's like they used in the recording, it sounds like they used a ton of like just beautiful room mics.
Yep.
And that room sounds like a cathedral. And so you hear the bell and it's just like forever.
Huge. Yeah. It really like Brad Krieger and James, the two that run Big Nice. We were there, that Radial Alignment album was their first touch of heavy. They've done a ton of work out of that space, but nothing like Burr. And so I feel like they just knocked it out of the park. Like,
in a sense, that's a good thing because they don't have any weird prejudices or biases.
Sure.
They're going in with just as an experimental and creative mindset as you guys are.
Yeah.
So it becomes like, it becomes this joint like work of art that if you went to a studio that specifies in heavy and like, you know,
they have all their kind of like,
they have a preset. Yeah. Like they know what they want the sound, unless you're working with like a really great producer. Right. But in a sense, like I feel like you guys really did kind of hit the jackpot on that, where we've never done heavy, but we're open to it. And so
it felt really great. We were hyped, and the Radial Alignment and Underdeveloped were both mastered by them too. The track on the split, we wanted to be mastered by the same person who mastered the Don't Grow Old tracks. So that was done at God City.
Yeah.
Which is like,
legendary.
And really love what they did. It's interesting to hear Particle and Underdeveloped side by side because they were recorded at the same time, just mastered differently.
You are going to get a different, it's like a different finish polish.
Yeah.
Because the mastering really doesn't do anything besides highlight certain aspects of the music. So it's definitely super cool.
Yeah, man.
Well, the tracks really do sound awesome. The split's really fun to listen to, and you can headbang and, you know, I don't know, like mosh in your room in the same
shake.
Yeah, you can just violently shake your head. So everybody be sure to check that out. It's on Spotify and everywhere music can be found.
Word. Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming on. I feel like I've completely nerded out, and that like maybe 1% of my listeners are gonna like the coffee talk. But for me, I love learning and talking about, you know, coffee science and specialty coffee, and, you know, the whole like supply chain and everything. It really it's really inspiring to talk to people that are just as passionate about it and that are actively involved in like the process. So thank you so much for coming on. And like just giving me life with all this coffee talk, man. I do just have one last question for you before we sign off.
Yeah.
What is your favorite city for beans and breakdowns?
Oh boy. I would say New York. I need to caveat that with a massive bias because I'm from New York City.
Okay.
But in terms of beans, like drip coffee down there, my buddy Nigel runs it and it's just like crushing the game with just, it almost sounds like an account like the one that you got that Gardelli from, or I'm blanking on the name.
It's Gardelli, I think.
Gardelli.
Yeah, Gardelli. Not Gardelli, like the chocolate.
The Gardelli, but he's sourcing just like the best international, like regardless, he's just getting it. So there's just like a lot of like really intentional shops opening up in the city right now. And then I just still love like the thrash scene that exists, like, in the village of and alleys of St. Mark's Place and all that. So I would say New York would probably be my bean and breakdown capital.
That's great. I know my friend just was in New York and he was sending me like all these pictures. He went to like Devotion.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, dude, Devotion's rad. Their model's super cool. Sweet Leaf is crushing it. They're kind of like throughout Queens and Brooklyn. And they're also like tethered to the hardcore scene. Rich, who owns it, is like Ramones reincarnate.
That's cool.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff going on down there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, and I look forward to sending some coffee back and forth.
Dude, yeah. Let's stay in touch. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Good way to start the day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beans and Breakdowns. I want to say a huge shout out to Justin for coming on the podcast and nerding out with me about coffee, and of course talking about Burr and other music and stuff like that. It was such an awesome time, and I really appreciate you coming on. Be sure to check out Burr's newest split with Don't Grow Old. Also, be sure to check out Bolt Coffee. You can visit their website and order some coffee, or if you're in the Providence area, then be sure to go and check out the shop if you haven't already. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. If you would like more info on the podcast, you can visit us on the web at beansandbreakdowns.com or on Instagram at beansandbreakdowns. Until next week, stay caffeinated and wake the fuck up.